listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hello and what's up everyone? Welcome along to the Straight to Video podcast. I had the most fun talking to today's guest, drummer and showman extraordinaire, Mr. Robin Guy. This fella is one of the most hardworking, talented and fun drummers you're likely to come across. Whether you're into rock, metal, pop, punk, this guy has done it all and fits into every musical genre he wants to try his hand at. Robin started his career in hard rock and glam bands in the late 80s to guesting with Faith No More on Top of the Pops in the early 90s, helping the gutter trash rock band Rachel Stamp become underground DIY kings. He's toured with Lars Frederikson of Rancid, and he even made an appearance in the Ollie Murs video for the hit single Heart Skips a Beat. When the world returns to normal though, you will most likely catch Robin slamming the drums for Sham 69 and also the Fiascos. This chat was a lot of fun and we covered a lot of ground, including talk of Robin's brother Corin, who is now an uber successful movie director. We chat about adventures working his way through the ranks of various bands before becoming the go-to guy when a band needs a drummer who can deliver night after night but have a smile whilst doing it. Robin is high energy all the time, and if you have any gas left in the tank after this chat, you can find out more about his adventures by visiting Robin Guy Drummer on Facebook, at Robin Guy on Twitter, or if Instagram is your thing, then simply look up Robin Guy Drums. So strap in folks and enjoy this talk with the one and only Robin Guy. I don't know if we've ever actually crossed paths.
You know, I was actually thinking this over the last sort of, few minutes, hours, days or whatever. I was thinking we must have met, we must have hung out. And I'm thinking, I just can't remember. We obviously know 10,000 of the same people, bands, gigs, venues, stories, shenanigans. And I'm like, have we ever, shared a tour bus or been backstage together? Do you tell me, man,
You're in a band with two of my favourite people, Richie and Keith.
There you go. Two of my favourite people too, man.
Exactly.
And that's it. I think that's probably where your name's cropped up as well. Just to sort of, casual, oh yeah, Rob's doing this, blah, blah, blah. He's talked to this, blah, blah, blah. All along I've known of you and about you, but whether I've actually known you. So here we go, man,
I filled in for Kitty Hudson on bass some years ago, but that's probably about 10 years ago.
If you're a musician and in rock and roll and you haven't filled in for Kitty Hudson, then, there's something, it's kind of almost like a training ground. There's bands in America that you have to have gone through. I think like Dope is one of them, isn't
right.
there? Everyone in the Murder Dolls has been in Dope, or stuff like that, and other things like that. Kitty is the version of the UK Pussycat, LA Guns, Dope. It's that kind of thing.
Kitty Hudson got such great songs there, man, and in the Fiascos as well.
Well, Richie and Keith don't write duff tunes. They're rock and roll swordsmiths, so to speak. So I mean, whether it's Kitty back in the day or Fiascos now, where you've got like Fiascos, you've got four frontmen in that band, all doing screaming harmonies and rocking out and posing basically, and kind of getting away with it. And, Kitty was a sort of a version of that. I think Fiasco's just taking it to a little bit further and faster,
Do you guys go back years and years then?
Yeah, me and Richie go back a long way. I mean, probably back to not even bands, probably just to, London's rock and roll circuit of, heaving up in the same gutter, you know what I mean? And so and the thing is, we actually get mistaken for brothers. We both got, we're both devilishly handsome. I was going to say both got big noses, but if you look at early pictures of Richie with long hair and me with long hair, very, very similar. Looks, style, rock and roll, drinking, posing, all of that, and kindred spirits and what have you. So we've been buddies for a long time. It was only a matter of time, really, I guess. And I did the Kitty Hudson stuff and filling in, and then I was in the band, and then someone else was in the band while I was doing something else, and I'd fill in, and that's how it works, isn't it? Once you're on the sort of in the file of facts,
that's it.
So and so's got the flu, so and so's.
Who can we call up? I know I'll do it.
Yeah. And so and that's how you that's how you keep busy. That's how you get work and stuff. And so me and Richie go back as buddies and musicians and bandmates, and then through that, obviously Keith, joined Kitty Gang. Obviously, to later on when the Fiascos were formed, it was like Keith and Ben, bass player, in hospital, waking up on both, two beds in a ward. And I think, one of them had a Wild Arts t-shirt, one of them had a Ramones t-shirt, and they both looked at each other. And that's the great thing about rock and roll. You see someone with a black t-shirt with a
instant connection,
and you just go, hey, you must be cool. And Keith was talking about probably Kitty Hudson or the fact that he's a guitarist, and Ben was like, hey, I'm bass player, and obviously swapped notes and came back to no doubt Richie at some point. And I can't, we obviously just bonded over vast amounts of alcohol, and somewhere along the line some great music came out.
Love it, man.
Just like everything in life, isn't it? You realize, oh my God, I've known that guy for 25 years, or that guy's been part of my life for 30 or 10 or 5, and time just goes, doesn't it?
Insane. I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us and actually get a chance to meet face to face, as you can do in these times.
No, looking forward to a thorough grilling.
Well, yeah, I'm going to throw it right back.
That's right. Well, your podcast is 80s, isn't it? Kind of from there on in, isn't it? I still maintain that. I mean, I was born in 70, so, my teenage years were like, I think, just the best era to have to be a teenager, where all the bands released all the greatest records, whether you got whether it's, Shout at the Devil or Number of the Beast or, Twisted Sister doing a thing or Wasp, but, and it was rock and roll craziness, and that was my normality, so I'm proud of the fact that, the first telly we had in the house was a black and white, and then it was like, oh, what's a colour TV? We were the last house in the village, to get a colour TV, and then it was like, can we get a, video recorder? And then it was like cassettes, and it was CDs, and we've lived through vinyl and cassette. So all that kind of thing that some kid nowadays would be like, what's a CD almost? You know what I mean? And we would have that one record shop you'd go to and queue up and buy the, whatever it was, whether it was the latest, back in the day, the Adam and the Ants release or the Police release or the Madness release or Madonna or whatever pop was in the, the early 80s kind of thing that got me going. And then you branch into rock and metal and stuff. And I mean, it's magical, studying albums, all that stuff. And now people are like, oh, I got it for free and it's boring because it's downloadable. And screw all that.
It can go from year to year, but if you just pick a year of 84 or 87, the amount of game changer albums that came out in the years,
no, totally.
You don't see it these days, I don't think. Not landmark albums that have such a change the landscape.
But even the ones slightly below the landmark, which wouldn't necessarily be, like you said, like I said, say Number of the Beast, with a huge record or Shout the Devil, or, but even sort of I don't know, Long Cold Winter or something by Cinderella, do you know what I'm saying? Just cool as hell albums, that you just go, that's legit, that's just amazing. And, I mean, who cares if something doesn't have to be major worldwide for it to change your life? Some of my favorite bands, I'm sure, we can, whatever, we share stories or, likes. One of my favorite bands is Junkyard. I mean, that's a great band, but it's not a household name.
They're one of those proper cult underground bands, especially when they came over to the UK a few years ago. I know people were losing their minds about it.
Me and Richie kind of not hooked that up per se, but we jumped on it and we emailed their agent and said, we're going to be the support band, whether you like it or not. I won't say exactly what Richie said. It involves sort of, bodily services.
What have we got to do? We want to do it.
Because before they announced coming to the UK, we were like, look, they've reformed and we want to go and hang with these guys or at least see them, so we're going to get on a plane and go to Spain or wherever they play, but they came to the UK, was like, well, we're not only going to be fans and going to see them, but we're going to damn well support them. And so we hooked that up. But again, it doesn't have to be the biggest band in the world to be a major influence or just a source of utter joy and love.
Especially bands like that, of that kind of era towards the late 80s, even going into the early 90s, when you look at, people say it became oversaturated, which it perhaps did.
Well, everything does, doesn't it? That's why,
Yeah, if you were a fan, the amount of that album all came out within a few months. It's unreal.
Magical. And I just think it's a real shame that, people now, to get that, they've got to kind of really, really dig into the archives. And just, even things like, I think the other day I was thinking, I don't actually own the first Faster Pussycat album on CD. And now it's like £1,000 because it's like, you know what I mean? Because it's a rarity. And back in the day, it's like a throwaway, get this, everyone's got it, whatever. Probably got it in vinyl in my parents' loft. But I mean, these are just small little silly examples. But, we know what we're talking about. And we lived through it and had the vinyl or the cassette. And you saved up for weeks or months expecting that release. And it became real special. And now I think real sadly that there's no expectancy, because it's like, if it's not here in the next 5 minutes for free on a download rip site, then screw it. And you just go, that just takes a whole, the amount of years I must have just stared at Iron Maiden album covers. Me and my friends at school would like talk about, I found a new swear word on one of the runes on the hieroglyphics on Power Slave. We're like, oh no, you didn't. I think I saw the word shit written backwards. It would be incredible. And just, I don't know, what do kids get infused about nowadays, man,
But saying that, I don't know if you're familiar with the band The 1975.
They got the quirkiness that Talking Heads had, right?
Yeah, that kind of stuff, yeah.
I'm with you, yeah.
I thought that. It's like, kids don't appreciate music today. But we went to see them live. It was probably just before the lockdown last February at Nottingham Arena. And we were like the oldest people there, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
That entire arena was singing every single word. And they're not like throwaway lyrics. It's stuff you proper have to study. And I was like, wow.
Did they read the liner notes of who the roadie was and what sandwiches did he eat?
Well, probably not that much.
I used to love all that. All the liner notes where it's like, Fred Bomber Smith or something. You'd be like, why is he called that? Is it because he eats too much cheese sandwiches? Or, and all the facts of the road and just stuff that as a kid you're like, wow, it's another world. And obviously when you get into that world and you kind of, I wanted to put a bit back in a way, like I said, when we first did the first Rachel Stamp album, my thanks list was like 20 pages long with just everyone I ever wanted to thank and little stories about them, and because I got that from my past.
Oh, that's great. I love it. So if you was able to look back through some kind of lens to pre-Robin Guy the drummer, do you think you'd have been able to spot early signs of the showman character that the drums allowed you to become? Was you pretty larger than life as a kid? Was you bouncing off the walls?
That's a good question, man. I mean, damn. And that's pretty unique as well. That's a good original question. I guess, the cliche answer would be like, hey, man, I've always been a crazy mofo, But I mean, it's like, when you're a kid, you just do what kids do. You want to pull wheelies on your homemade BMX or whatever,
Was it a homemade one? I had like a Rally Striker, which wasn't a BMX, but it kind of looked like one. So it was my pretend BMX.
That was still cool, like, what is it, Striker and a Grifter, and then BMX is coming. And, if you're lucky, you've got mag wheels or something. But no, I mean, we had, standard bikes that I would then put you remember the football cards in the wheels and they go brrr, and you feel like you're a motorbike. And of course, I stupidly was cycling to primary school one day. The football card came out of the wheel. So I reached forward whilst cycling down this hill with my foot and poked it into the spoke. And of course, the foot carried on. I did a massive endo, ended up, ripping my arm to shreds and ending up in the nettles and crying all the way to school and turning up like a burn victim. I was like, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I've always been, adventurous. My folks, we were all practical. We'd go in my granddad had a workshop and we'd go to visit my dad's dad. We'd end up building like a shark or an aeroplane, and I'd be the kid making the airfix kits and putting them on the ceiling with the fishing wire and just building things. So I definitely came from the background of like practicalness, building boats, making go-karts. One time I had made a sail out of bed sheets and some doweling and put it on my go-kart, and then we made a land yacht. You know what I mean? So we took it around the school playground on a weekend, me and my dad, and I was like sailing around the car, but just stuff like that. I was infatuated with things moving and flying, and I think there's a film called Those Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines, and it's old, like kind of almost Monty Python-esque. It's brilliant, kind of like from a Carry On era, and it was just these crazy contraptions, and I was just fascinated. I was like, one day I'm going to build something that's going to fly off a cliff. I probably still am. I want to get like a hang glider at some point. No, microlight. That's the one. I'd love to have a microlight. But things that lawnmower engines and propellers and things and stuff. So I was always like practically minded. I think that probably helped going into drums, because you've got to be practically minded if you're a drummer, because you've got to lift so much bloody gear. Singer just puts the microphone in his back pocket and goes to the bar, doesn't he?
Have you gone through that stage of like creating the most biggest drum kit then after a while, right, I'm going to downsize it all?
Yeah, of course. Both. Yeah, totally. I mean, if you think my first kit was third hand of the village. Now I knew what second hand was because, like, you know, I'd get my sister's hand-me-down sweatshirts that I'd actually look forward to. I'd be like, oh, can't wait till she's too big for that blue sweatshirt. I'm going to get it. And that was I'm not giving you a poverty rap or anything here, but it was that kind of, you know, we'd get a jumble sale, so I'd come back with a new sweater and it'd be exciting. So I knew what second hand was. And when I realized this drum kit was third hand, I was like, wow, that's a thing, you know. And I ended up going around this kid's house who was a few years older than me in my secondary school and play on his kit after school. Eventually he kind of lost interest and he said, do you want to buy it? I was like, yeah. And I bought it for £48.
48, was that like a bartering thing? It was at 50 and I can give you 48.
I think, no, do you know what? I don't know what. That's a very good point. I've always just gone 48 quid. But back then, you know, like £1 could be divided. You know, we had half pence pieces. So everything was much more subdivided. So it wasn't like round up a fiver, because a fiver, you could probably buy a house, you know.
Could buy that Faster Pussycat album.
Exactly. So, it was 48 quid. I was on like 7.5 pence pocket money at the time, you know, and eventually a few years later, it went up to £1, you know, and my parents made me have this little diary book of how we buy the drum kit. So they fronted it, obviously, you know, and I put in all my life savings, which was probably like £5.75. And then I'd get, like, every Christmas, I'd get from grandma and grandpa £3.80 or, you know, £5.20, and I'd mark it off. And consequently, I'd work, I'd do little Saturday jobs, I'd sweep up, I'd muck out the chickens on the, you know, down the farm around the road, and all this kind of stuff. And eventually you save up another £4.15 and put it in, and it'd be a proud moment. And parents, it'd be almost like a drum roll. You'd come and mark up the book, and eventually, you know, whittles down, and then your aunt and uncle give you, like, you know, £4 for the next 2 birthdays and 5 Christmases. And it would work. And eventually you pay it off and you'd get that proud moment of, like, now you own your kit, like 17 and a half years later or whatever, you know. But consequently, I've never been in debt and I don't own a credit card. So it's obviously done some good, instilled in me. And this kit had a Buddy Rich signature on, which, you know, the legendary jazz drummer, you know, some people say is the best drummer in the world that's ever lived. And it had his drum signature on. Then I sold the kit and got a second kit. By this point, you know, I was into, Iron Maiden. And of course, you know, that was the big Iron Maiden kit where it starts with these minuscule toms that you can barely see going all the way around you to the big ones on the right hand side. And I was like, that's what a drum kit is. That's what I want. I want the big Power Slave.
That's the bar.
Yeah, that's the one. And so, you know, I went to Tunbridge Wells because I was, you know, based down south in East Sussex, and Tunbridge Wells is a big music shop called Underground Sounds, and I went in there and saw this kit. It was like single-headed power tom thingamabob, you know, in brushed gold. I was just like, that's it. It's almost big enough, you know. And then eventually I got another 2 toms to make the small ones, and then I had the whole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so I had like 7 toms and a kick drum and a snare and, you know, cymbals and it was fantastic. So that was the second kit. And then after that, you know, I was like, let's get serious. And then it was sort of like, you know, I sold it back to the shop and they had a pink drum kit with a power rack, you know, with the big bars and all that. And it was just like, yeah, that's got me all over it, you know, loud and proud. It was kind of similar size. It was still huge, but it was like more arena rock.
How was you transferring all this stuff around, transporting it?
In my granddad's Ford Fiesta that he left to me or give to me or I bought or whatever. And I just got an expert at packing. I think I'd have like a kick drum. I had 2 kick drums, 3 rack toms, 2 floor toms, and a big power tower system and all this hardware. And I'd sort of strap it in the passenger seat, you know, and I just became very good at packing, you know, Tetris King, you know, and I'd sort of commute to Wales with this bloody kit. I joined the Rag Dolls, and it was just this big, loud, proud drum kit with double chinas up here with the cymbals with the big weights on the end. It was actually more like an Eric Carr from Kiss type drum kit than a Nicker McBrain Iron Maiden thing. But it still was, I just wanted big and badass. And that continued for a long time, even with its impracticalities of having such a effing large kit that took 20 days to set up and pack down. Well, I didn't care because that's how it is. And then I saw Warrior Soul at the Astoria, and that changed my life because the drummer had this 1 rack, 1 floor, tiny kit. Mark Evans, rest in peace. Just incredible, tight drummer, made it sound amazing. And it was on the Chill Pill tour. It was Corey Clark's birthday. They sung him happy birthday, gave him, and I was just sitting there and the sound was tearing my face off. The drums were so tight and angular, and it was just really heavy and really punk and tight. And this drummer was just tearing it up. Totally not flamboyant or big or rock, but just on it. And I was like, if he can make that tiny piece of crap kit sound so good, I was like, that just changed my whole vision. I was like, what am I doing with all this fanfare?
Just the simplicity clicked.
And I can lift it up with one hand, you know, and get to the bar quicker, you know. So so to name drop those bands, you know, it literally was, that was the day that my whole thing went from the big rock and roll kit with the big towers and scaffolding and all that stuff to like a small thing. And I also, like, back in the day, one of the bands I was playing, we supported Green Jelly at the Astoria. Do you remember Little Pig, let me in? Not but a hair, I'm a chin, you know. And it was that, I don't think it was Gwar. I don't think we supported Gwar. But anyway, we were supporting them. And I had this huge kit. You know, we were first on at 7:30. And I saw the little, you know, the video. And you just saw a tuft of hair and all this toms. And I was like, so screw that. I want to see me, you know? And I realized all you're seeing is a big kit with this shaking thing going on. And then I realized, so it is partly vanity as well, Rob. I don't mind admitting. You know, when I saw the whole Mark Evans Warrior Soul one racked on kit, I was like, you can really see what's going on there. And that's where the whole thing sort of continued with the sort of, you know, the performing. But I was just like, well, now I can really be seen, and I can see also the audience. I'm not hiding behind this wall of toms and stuff. So it worked on a numerous bunch of levels, some of which I'd get credit for being a musician and others a downright poser. But at least I'm being honest, you know what I'm saying?
You mentioned you got an older sister. You've got a younger brother as well. Is it Corin?
That's right, yeah. Corin, he's my talented younger brother. He's like 4.5 years younger than me. I've got older sisters a year and a half older than me, you know. So I was always the middle kid complaining that I didn't get it. He's got more peas on his plate. She's got more chips or fish, you know, whatever it was. And so it was always like banging for equality if you're a middle child. And if you're a middle child, you know what I'm talking about, you know. So it was always that. But, you know, we were great allies. And obviously I got him into the rock and roll. And, you know, if you're an older brother, you know, you're the guy first out the gate. You're the one that makes the mistakes. He's the one that learns from your mistakes that you don't, you know, and you're always kind of pioneering whether you want it or not, like good things and bad things. So I guess he learned a lot of stuff through having me as a crazy rock and roll older brother, which influenced him. But then obviously, you know, you find your own path. He makes films. He's done some amazing horror films and, you know, big on that scene. And, you know, there's also lots of rock and roll ties with his world to, well, not my world, but, you know.
Didn't he do some like promo videos for Rachel Stamp and Anti-Product?
This is the thing. Basically, the rule of thumb, if you're getting into films, is like, if you want to do big feature films, no one will touch you unless you've done adverts, which nowadays adverts are like, you know, they're mini films. They've got big sets and stuff like that. But you can't get into adverts until you've done pop vids. So, you know, that's the kind of 3 steps. And a lot of people just stay doing videos, not because of a skill thing, but they just love doing vids, you know. Other people just become excellent at doing adverts. And so Corin's done all of those things. He's done a Cronenberg advert and a what have you, you know. And obviously it's ended up with him doing The Nun, The Hallow, Gangs of London, and so wicked stuff like that. But to begin with, obviously, you know, you need to cut your teeth, and he cut his teeth on all my bands, you know what I mean? So yeah, he did I Want to Be a Doll, Rachel Stamp, and he did Bungee Jumping People Die, which is Anti-Product, which is I recorded the drums on the debut record. And then he went on to do, you know, Prodigy, Warrior Dance, which kind of funnily got banned by Kerrang. It's like, come on, Kerrang, you're supposed to be rock and metal, man.
That's kind of the best thing you want, really.
Oh, totally. And he's done God and Satan by Biffy Clyro, which if you watch that, half of my folks' parents' village are in it as like New Orleans sort of voodoo march. They walk across a cornfield, which looks like it's in New Orleans, and it's in a little village near Lewis, you know. So my aunt and uncle, my cousin puts, you know, one of the Biffy Clyro guys to bed in his deathbed or whatever, and half the village, my dad's there clad in, oh, fantastic. He did Keen, Somewhere Only We, you know, he did that, and he shot it in a well pool near the village, and he wanted an old drum kit that could be put in a well, you know, in a pool with water. So I got him some old trashy drums and sprayed up the cymbals and, you know, all this kind. So I helped out on that. And then you become friends with the guys from Keen. And, you know, Corin then did Bed Shapes. Another big hit, Bed Shaped and Legs of Stone. And he'd doing an animation in our dad's garage at the time. And he used some of the animation from that, stop animation. It took 5.5 years locked in a garage, self-locking himself in a garage to come up with a half-an-hour animation. So 5.5 years of work for half-an-hour animation. I mean, it's amazing. So, you know, he used that. And this is how the industry works. You know, you use something for some project and then you can use a bit for something else. And then, you know, then the guys from the project are like, hey, we love that animation. And then he animated some cigarette packets for Warrior Dance. Then Liam Howlett's calling him up saying, hey, you know, I want to do some soundtrack for your new film. And then he's releasing The Hallow, and he goes to the film festivals. Producers of the film go, hey, that's Slash watching your film. Do you want to meet him? You know, his new girlfriend. And so Corin then became friends with Slash. Slash then ended up wearing a Hallow t-shirt at Download. Me and Richie from Fiascos, we came in with the tickets as well. And we're watching side of stage and, you know, watching Motley Crue. You know, it's fun and it's cool. And that's how these crazy things happen. I mean, you know, I've got a saying which is very simple. How you make it is basically by doing stuff. If you do stuff, then stuff will happen. And if you don't do stuff, then no stuff will happen. And it sounds so obvious, but people don't get that. They basically want to win X Factor. They want to win the pools, the lottery. They want to be given £1 million. They want to have a blessed life. And you go, no one with a blessed life, they've had to earn that, you know, and there's no such thing as a blessed life either, because even millionaires' helicopters need MOTs, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those things, do stuff and things will kind of eventually take hold. But everyone, especially in this day and age, everyone wants the instant fix. And I think that's where people like myself and yourself and, you know, us old schoolers, we've started in the parents' garage and, you know, we've done stuff like that and not knowing what the hell we were doing for a lot of the time. Nowadays, people still don't know what they're doing, but they can go on YouTube and learn how someone else doesn't know how to do it. Yeah. But yeah, I've kind of proud that, you know, every step of the way I've kind of sweated blood and spat teeth for it, you know, which makes it kind of more real. Well, it makes it very real.
So did you and your brother, he's done well in the horror community. Was you both big horror fans when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I dig it. I mean, you know, my brother's, that's his thing. You know what I mean? He was like, you know, obsessed with Evil Dead and covering all his friends on the weekends with ketchup and latex and goo and making like arrows and darts go through their head and pretending to run them over with parents' lawnmower and throwing limbs around and making it all happen. I mean, by this point, I was, you know, in the band thing. So I was doing my thing. I've got a couple of little cameos here and there on his early films and bits and bobs. But it was always like me up in London going, hey, Corin, I've got guest list for this party, you know, come and hang out with the guys from blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I'm just finishing this shot that's taken me 2 weeks to do. And I'd be like, oh man, shame. So he's very dedicated in that respect. And obviously I was very dedicated in the art of partying my ass off and rocking and rolling. So, but we both worked very hard at doing our thing. And, you know, I'm very supportive of him and he's very supportive of me. Like I said, he cut his teeth on a lot of the stuff that I was doing, like the stamp video, you know, I Want to Be a Doll and that. And we both have that kind of thing where, you know, you always do more than you can do. You always do more than the budget allows, because it will stretch you and it will also, don't just do what, you know, just enough to get by, you know, go for it and it will stand out.
So when did music kind of get onto your radar? I've seen you mention Adam and the Ants and the Police.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, were they the two or was there anything before that?
Well, I think that sort of the late 70s, early 80s was like, we were just really lucky because that was when, if you're a pop band, it was organic. Even Madonna had a band. She had a drummer, she had a bass player, she had a guitarist, she went and toured the clubs. And so, you know, I mean, one of my favorite bands, certainly back then, but of kind of general of all time as a big early influence, and is the Police. I just thought they're really original, great songs. And, you know, are they pop? Are they punk? Are they ska? Are they reggae? Are they whatever? They're just original and there's some great songs. And then Adam and the Ants came out, one of the most original. I mean, they're a pop band. Are they? I don't know. They look like buccaneers. They look like crazy glam rock pirates, and they've got the most original song structures ever. And it's all and loads of drumming. I mean, you know, ant rap, Burundi beat, the whole thing. You know, Marilyn Manson ripped it off / did a tribute with, you know, beautiful people, and it's all like bum bum.
Quite a contrast to the Police though, because the Police stuff's very intricate.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's the thing. It's totally different. But like my thing back then, before, you know, I discovered heavy metal and all that stuff, was early 80s pop. So to me, it was Adam and the Ants, Police, Madonna, Madness, Duran Duran. You know, like that was the big, great songs, pop, you know, and I just like music.
And all totally mainstream as well, which is crazy, really.
Yeah, true. But you got to remember, unlike, say, America, where they've had rock stations for years, you know, 70s, 80s, whatever, we would be, we're blessed with 1 hour a week with the Friday night rock show. And it was too late for me to listen. I'd be sneaking in with a little radio under the pillow kind of vibe. So for me, the only thing that we could get music was probably Top of the Pops, you know, on a Thursday night at 7 p.m. after the Incredible Hulk or something, you know. And obviously it was the things that would be playing would be like Rio by Duran Duran.
But I mean, just like really great stuff, but we're still considered mainstream as well, which is like really cool.
Just to me, just really, really good songs, you know. And obviously, like I said, even there, you got such diverse, you know, I didn't really know that Madness were kind of like a ska, whatever, pop band, but, you know, and the Police were like doing something completely different. Adam Ants different, and Madonna and Duran Duran probably the nearest thing for pop music, you know. And then at the age of 13, we did a French exchange with my school. So I went over to France, and there was me and my couple of friends, and one of them was the typical fat metaler, you know, with the spots and stuff. I mean, you know, I don't mean mean any disrespect, Mark Howard. But, he was and he had the big Killers T-shirt, which I was frightened of. And I was like, but I'd never seen anything like it. Because if you haven't seen a black T-shirt with like white and yellow and crazy hair and an axe and blood, it's so much color exploding. I was just aware that was something. I didn't really know what it was. And then I went to my French correspondent's house, who I was staying with, called Stefan Gonzalez. And he was obsessed with Michael Jackson. Every single thing in his room was Michael Jackson. Big posters, record store cutouts, you know what I mean? And I was like, wow, okay, I like Michael Jackson, like, no problem. But like, I was like, what's this in the corner? And there was a little stack of cassettes. He's like, Robin, he's shit. He cheats, Robin. And it was Judas Priest, it was Kiss Dynasty, it was Killer's Maiden, or probably some Van Halen. And it was, shit, he didn't like that. I sort of thumbed through it and obviously singled out the Killers by Iron Maiden because I was like, wow, that's the T-shirt that my friend Mark has got on. I've got to see what that T-shirt sounds like.
That's great.
I grabbed the computer for a cassette recorder that was the modem for playing things on back then, wasn't it? And I ran a long bath. I went in the bathroom and locked myself in and press play on this French version of this Killers cassette. And that was it, man.
Yeah.
Turned it over, just mesmerized. And then the water was cold. And, the Stefan's dad's going, Robin, are you okay in there? I'm like, yes, like this. Yes, I've discovered I've seen the light, this is it now. That was it. Then after that, it was peace of mind. And I said, I want this cassette. And he sold it to me for like 8 francs or something. He wouldn't give it to me. And he had Dynasty as well, which is Kiss, 2000 Man. And that was good as well. But Killers, Iron Maiden, that was it. And so then off you go on the journey of discovering that.
I love the fact that you had to go to France to discover it.
To be in a Michael Jackson maniac's house to discover the greatest metal band of all time, So that was it. But it didn't mean I suddenly turned my back on, the Madonnas and Duran Durans and the Pops and it's just still music to me. I hate it when people go, I only listen to rap, everything else is crap. I only listen to dance, everything. I only listen to metal. I don't like jazz. It's like, it's just music to me. I always maintain there's 2 kinds of music, good and bad. So there's good dance, there's bad dance, there's good folk, there's bad folk, there's good metal, blah blah blah, and just stuff I like it, so I listen to it. If it's reggae, I like it. So that just opened a whole new world. And then obviously, if you analyze that period of time, that's when Motley Crue were kind of hitting it large as well. That was obviously another thing with oh my god, these guys look like Martians, they look like aliens.
Where was you seeing bands like that?
That's a good point. Do you know what? I think the first time I ever saw a picture of this thing called Motley Crue was a picture of them. It was probably Theatre of Pain era. I think it was like a train station's magazine rack. And I just waiting for my parents to pick me up. And I found probably the only mag at the time that I knew of was probably Smash Hits or something. And in the first page, it was like, the band Smash Hits readers have voted most wanted to leave stranded on Mars. Motley Crue. It was just a picture of these guys with like lingerie and pink and like crazy gloves and stuff doing that. And it was like band most wanted to be left stranded on Mars. And I was like, there's nothing that makes me want to get into them if people don't like them. I was like, wow, that's intriguing. What's this thing called a Motley Crue? And so, as you grow up and you find out things like that. And so, and then, then you get Kerrang and, you're open to the world of rock and roll. So my 3Ms were Maiden, Motley and Motorhead.
And was you playing drums at this point?
Yeah, I think my first, I always wanted to be in bands, but the different levels of what how to do that. I jammed with a few people in my folks' front room and whatever. But when I first wanted to be like, I want to be in a rock band. Again, it all comes down to the bands and reading stuff. I had the Police annual as in the band. And I remember, 3 interviews and it was like, where did you form? And they were like, we formed in college. And of course, no one in my school was doing the band thing. It was like, he so-and-so plays tuba, in the wind band or whatever. I think I got drafted in as a triangle player, hit it once in the wrong time, cried and walked out the room. So that was it for school. I was like, well, the Police formed in college, so I'm going to go to college to form a band, not because I wanted to do any more curriculum. And that's what happened. I went to college and found this guy with long spiky hair, and we hooked up and formed the first band, which was called Centerfold. We started rehearsing in the local village hall, and then his brother joined, who he was a journalist, and he was writing for Metal Hammer at the time. And I thought, we're going to make it because of that, And we did a few local gigs, and then that sort of morphed into a band called Hang 'em High. The bass player was off doing his thing, so we got another guy in and another guitarist, so we were a 4-piece, and that was Hang 'em High. Then Hang 'em High morphed into Jailbird, and then we started, with Hang 'em High, we'd hit the big towns like Brighton and stuff. So at different levels, you step up. So the first band, Centerfold, would play local pubs and stuff like that. Then Hang 'em High would hit Brighton and become a little bit of a name there, do our first demos and cassettes and stuff and recordings. Then Jailbird, we started hitting London.
How was that for you to go to London for that first time? time?
Well, it's just like, oh my God, what are all these drunks doing here? And these crazy people. And yeah, it was magic. I mean, just when you pull up outside a venue and there's just loads of people and hangers on and bands and gear storage and stuff that we nowadays just blink and it's normal. But back then you're like, we're arriving on a war zone in Mars. It's just some crazy new world thing, So it's incredibly exciting. But as you know, you don't know what you're doing. You're just turning up and 1 minute suddenly you blink and you're too pissed to play and you go, oh God, or some of the people like that. But, magical things. And you dine out on that story of that one time you did a one gig for weeks or months, because it lasted so long. Then, we took that as far as it could go. And then I wanted more. So I was like, right, I've got to join a bit more of a name band or a band that's established or a band that's going places or whatever, And so I put some adverts out and I ended up relocating to Wales.
Was that with Ragdolls?
Ragdolls. So I moved to Wales. And of course, I literally thought they're all millionaires. I'm going to be like sex, drugs and rock and roll all day long. In my mind.
Did they get in touch with you or did you see that they needed a drummer?
Oh, that's a really good point. Oh my God. Did they call me? Did I call them? Do you know what? I think they might have called me because, I think they must have called me because I put an advert out. But again, this is one of those crazy incestuous business things where the drummer who I was replacing was called Jamie Kane, and he was one of the original drummers from Tiger Tales way back in the day. And then through this whole sort of scene, I became friends with David Ryder Prangley, who's now, frontman of bass player of Rachel Stamp, who obviously, I'm part of. But he was in a band called Hollyweird. I was in Ragdolls, and the big band at the time blowing up, with Tiger Tales, obviously. So they were the gods that everyone wanted to be supporting or whatever. The bass player, Mark Kelly of Ragdolls, he lent his BC Rich Bitch to Pepsi for the Love Bomb Baby video. So,
wow.
We're credited in the Berserk album thanks to Ragdolls. And at that time, we're like, we're going to make it because we got thanked by Tiger Tales. All this crazy little steps up all the way, And then we played the marquee and, Pepsi came down to see us and it was just like, wow. And then the manager of the Almighty at the time was sort of sniffing around, Tommy T, rest in peace, lovely guy. And he was like, look, you need to do some demos. So and my dad came on board and started managing us and we got on MTV, Headbangers Ball. We were the first band to be on Headbangers Ball without a record deal. And it was like, we were sandwiched between Wolfsbane and Iron Maiden. And it was like, Vanessa Warwick at the time, who was a goddess, introducing us going, hey, it's not, this is the first time I've ever done this, but this band's come to my attention. We're going to play this Ragdolls video. And, it's just all this wonderful stuff, rootsy, all on VHS recorders, cameras the size of a small car. And again, my brother would come up to Wales and he'd be one of the film crew filming these videos for us and stuff. And we did a fan club and all that stuff. And we did some TV shows out there and it was all going good. And then, the guitarist quits or the bass player moves to LA. Just life happens, At the time, of course, I'm just a heart and soul, all or nothing. I was like, how can you be doing this? My life's over, And at one point I was trying to salvage the band with like £1.50's worth of 10p's in a phone box in the rain in the middle of Wales, basically phoning these numbers that I'd got given of saying, hello, Mrs. Thingy, does your son play guitar? Just trying to put this band together because we had this showcase book in Brighton and it's just it's kind of demoralizing. It's like, make a great film out of it. But, and then the last 10p was like, Mum, Dad, it's Robin, I'm coming home, So
you'd actually relocated there?
Yeah, I'd given my heart and soul for them, because that's how I was and still is to, you just go, this is it. Mainly through naivety and not really knowing a damn thing. You just go, this is what you got to do. And then so I came back and then after going, right, I've done the local band, I've done the big towns locally. Right, we've done the sort of little name band in Wales. Now I need a band with some finance behind it and I need to get to London, let's do it properly, And so I just applied for the biggest advert I could find, and that was another whole crazy chapter of like living in this house with marble floors, chandeliers, swimming pool, Rolls Royce, Jaguar, Porsche, and my Astra van. And thinking we're totally going to make it because these guys have got the money. And what happened is basically I learned a lesson that you can have money and talent and the talent will keep the money. And if you've got money but no talent, sadly, once the money's gone,
it's just going to be a dripping tap.
Yeah, it's just kind of the money goes out and you can patch it up. And what happened is that the chandeliers got sold, the marble stuff disappeared, all the cars got sold one by one. The swimming pool, they couldn't afford the chemicals. It was like 80 degrees outside swimming and eventually without the chemicals, it turned into mud and then it cracked and then it started subsiding. Then the house started subsiding. Do you see what I'm saying? The whole thing was just like, and it was strange because that's the only band I've actually got like fired from because we got rid of the singer and we got this plucky young chap from Liverpool. And he just thought, wow, this is great. I'm going to get my homeboy from Liverpool in my covers band up in Liverpool and get him down. So he kind of turned the band against me, and they got him. And they literally came up to me one time and said, hey, we want you to leave. I was like, okay, nothing was really happening. But can you leave by 2 p.m. tomorrow? I've been living in his house for 2 years, and everything. Because the new guy's turning up. I was like, whoa, way to get the door to kick my ass on the way out. So, stole a couple of things and buggered off, But, again, your world implodes and you come back home and, you pick yourself up and you go, do I still want to do this? Yes, I'm a born rock and roll fighter. And then I was like, right, I need to get up to London for real and get a house and live there. And I ended up like living in this crazy rock and roll house. At one point it was 4 drummers, and then it was 2 drummers and 2 bass players. And then the drummer married the other drummer.
That must be a house in demand though, if you've got drummers and bass players in a house.
It wasn't quite on the level of the Motley Crue Dirt House, but it was kind of the West Ealing equivalent. And it was hilarious and so much fun and games and crazy. And it was like a training ground. Everyone came and played and stayed over, and it was crazy stuff. And, the lawn died, like Motorhead moving in, that kind of thing. But I mean, that was great. And then, I hooked up with Chris Dale, bass player. He'd done the Bruce Dickinson stuff when Bruce quit Maiden, and he had a project, and I ended up getting involved in the Satric thing.
Is that when you kind of felt like a bit of momentum going? Because that seems to be like where let's say the family tree of everything starts to kind of branch out.
Kind of, yeah. Well, this is the thing. I guess bridging the gap from the Ragdoll thing to the Rachel Stamp thing, which is where it started to really be like, I'm in the house now. This is my dream band. Certainly at that point, it was just like, this is everything I want. It's bombastic. It's rock and roll. Great tunes. Larry on stage. Kick-ass image. Like-minded guys and gals. And basically, because David had now moved from Wales, from his Hollywood thing, to London, and then eventually I caught up. And I'd managed to get myself on Top of the Pops with Faith No More to play drums. Replacing Mike Puffy Borden for a day because his wife was giving birth and he was moonlighting with Ozzy Osbourne and stuff. And I was the lucky guy that managed to get involved in that. And so I then was at a Korn gig, backstage at Korn. I bumped into David from the Rachel Stamp thing that he was doing at the time. And of course, I was desperate to be in a band. So I was obviously bragging, going, hey, man, I've just done Top of the Pops, yo, I'm on the scene. I need a band. And he was like, that's good to know. Hey, my band's Rachel Stamp. I was like, yeah, I know. That's cool. Well, let me know if you hear of anything. And then off we went. And then a few weeks later, we were at a Kiss gig at Finsbury Park with Skunk and Nancy supporting, and it was a big thing in the park. And this little figure in the distance, kind of getting nearer and nearer, came up to me, and it was David with a worried look on his face. Robin, you still looking for a band? I said, yeah. And he goes, my drummer's just shut his finger in a car door, and we're playing the Underworld in 3.5 days' time. Can you do it? And I was like, da-da, it's the calling. I was like, I'm doing it.
That was a precursor for many things, I would imagine. Like, that's going to be happening a lot.
That was it. Yeah. Bearing in mind, the internet wasn't a thing, so it was all cassette tapes and answer phones, photocopies and stuff. So I was like, right, here's my address, here's my landline, send me a list of the songs, get me the cassettes. So he got his publishing company to send me the cassettes. David then sung the songs down the phone, and I was listening to answer phone messages. I was trying to learn them, and we hooked up. We did 2.5 rehearsals, and then did this show at the Underworld, all sold out. I walked on stage, there's dry ice, there's stage drivers, there's cameras, there's film crew, bitching audience. Someone handcuffed himself to David at the end of the gig. He went to the fire service, fireplace to get it chopped off, or whatever. I was just like, this is the band for me. A couple of days later, we did Tea in the Park, and then he asked me to join, and the rest is history. The thing is with Stamp, we did pretty much everything that you could possibly do for a band coming up through the ranks. So to put it, not in, I'm not bragging, I'm just factually, we've done all the little small gigs, and then we got to a point where we were getting a bit of press, and then we started selling out the Barfly, the Monarch, and then eventually we got the Camden Underworld with 500 odd people. We sold that out. Then we got the Garage, 550, 600, sold that out. Then it's like, what's next? The LA2, 1,000 people, sold that out. And then we're like, oh, let's take a deep breath. And we eventually did Astoria, which is 2,000 people. Just didn't quite sell it out by, 10, 20 tickets. But we're an unsigned band headlining the place that Type O Negative play, Rancid play, Soulfly, Sepultura, you name it, what I call the big bands, the cool bands. And so that was just mental. And it was kind of double-edged sword because we're on stage, there's 2,000 people losing their minds, chanting, and we're going, it's brilliant. And then we're like, but we haven't got a deal. What else do we need to do to get signed, to get some money so that we can pay for adverts and get bigger and tour support, vans, tour managers, lighting, sound guys, monitors, roadies, more equipment, new snare drum, all that stuff that the fans just think falls in your lap, and, you don't think about the ramifications of putting together a tour. But, the way we'd do it, this is how crazy it was, that we would get bands with record deals to buy onto our tour because we got the audience and they hadn't, but then they would pay for the advert.
Nice.
In Kerrang, and Metal Hammer or Raw or Rock Sounds or whatever. And we would basically say to them, look, you can put an advert in the paper and no one's heard of you. But if you put our advert that we're going to send you the artwork for, and you can have the bottom quarter, you can do what the hell you want with the bottom quarter saying your band name. Kind of Peter plays Paul, Paul plays Peter. You know, that's how we did it. And so it looked like we got this big advert going, which was great. But it's kind of almost demeaning that we'd have to basically have the support band pay for it. But then we would walk on stage to the cheers and people screaming our names and fainting and crying and, you know, all that stuff. Fantastic rock and roll dream. And that's how we did it. And we put out 2 studio albums, a live album. You know, we did videos, we did press in Japan and, you know, all the kind of cool stuff, TV shows and that. But, you know, we never had the vast cash injection that some of these major label signings had.
It's still a name that's there, at least for me. I know when it crops up, it's got that longevity. You're not just a flash in the pan band that a record label chucked tens of thousands of pounds at.
Rachel Stamp's a band that means an awful lot to quite a few people. You know, that was, we were kind of rock and roll legends, but also accessible. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense, you know, and we would get down and dirty and play all the clubs up and down the country, and people, you know, at a certain point in their lives that would struck a chord. And there were obviously, you know, other bands that were kind of people were connecting with. It's really funny. One of the worst things that a journalist sort of like say, you know, to slag us off or whatever, was like that we were Welsh indie glam Pop-Tarts from Camden. And I was like, well, David's the only one from Wales. He's not from Wales now. No one lives in Canada. We're not indie. We're not Pop-Tarts, and we're not glam. You know, we got Stage Divers and Pits and stuff. And also, you know, the kids in our audience were wearing Chura Satana and Slipknot T-shirts. You know what I mean? But like when the press want to turn on you, they can do so quite quickly. But I mean, you know, I remember we got like in the independent releases charts, we were number 2 and number 1 was Oasis. Now, Oasis to me is like what you would call a major label band. It was just the fact they were on Creation, which was an independent label. So they qualified for the independent release chart. So of course they're going to be number 1 because they're freaking huge. So for us to be number 2, I kind of thought, well, we were basically number 1, really.
Exactly. In the true spirit of independence.
Yeah, you know. So as I said, we meant an awful lot to a good bunch of people, and that's fantastic. Yeah, we got some, you know, some good history there, you know, and that was great. And then, you know, like I said, it got to a point where kind of it went almost sort of full circle, and we kind of needed a big cash injection to take us on tour in the States, or to have a sleeper bus, or to have a really cool tour with a really cool band, like, you know, I don't know, whatever, us and the Murder Dolls or something. A little bit of good groovy facts here. I was trying to hook us up with a tour to get the Frankenstein drag queens from Planet 13 over, which if you know, I know you know your stuff, but other people, the front man of that band is Wednesday 13, who obviously then went on to do the Murder Dolls, which obviously got commercial success. And now he's obviously got his great his solo project. But they were this little band from, I don't know, what, Alabama or something, you know, on Century Media Records, you know, and I knew Andy Turner because I was a big Stuck Mojo fan and I did Total Rock Radio. So I'd get sent all these releases and he would see like, Robin, look, you're going to play this. And it was this crazy ass, it was like basically like the artwork was very like White Zombie. And I loved all that stuff. So I was like, wow, I'm going to get into this. It was total trash, garage punk, you know, rock and roll. And so I was like, who can we get that's tasty for the fans, that's going to be fun, that's never come over here? And then we were trying to work on this tour, get them over with Stamp. So, you know, that would be awesome. And then a few years later, I was interviewing Murder Dolls for Total Rock Radio. You know, I was interviewing Ben Graves, rest in peace, and Eric Griffin, because obviously everyone goes for the singer. And I would be like, no, I want a drummer, you know, much more cool. You know, I said, hey, is Wednesday around? And he came down and it was really nice because he said, you're that guy from Rachel Stamp, aren't you? Thanks for trying to sort that thing out back in the day. And that was really cool because, you know, it's nice to get a little acknowledgement. No, it didn't happen. This was the kind of thing I was trying to do, get involved with Rachel Stamp. So, you know, but you needed cash, you needed money, you needed tour buses. And
you hit all these different glass ceilings as you're going up.
Yeah, that's the point. The fans don't see that. They just see you in Kerrang or not in Kerrang, on tour or not on tour, whatever. And everyone thinks you're a millionaire and that's it. And that's cool. That's the rock and roll dream. But the reality is obviously like, you know, you got to put gas in the tank. And so, yeah, we kept pipping it. And that's why we put the records out ourselves and we put a live album out. And it was amazing. But it just got to the point where we were kind of stretched thin and we needed to be taken on by a big hand going, listen, we're going to get that tour with Rancid or, you know, whoever, you know, whatever.
We love your work ethic. Now we're just going to plug into this as well.
We're going to plug in and we're going to open for Motley Crue at Wembley Arena or whatever, you know, and then suddenly you become, everyone goes, and that would have been awesome, but it didn't happen. And, you know, then everyone blames everyone internally because they don't know who else to blame. You know, you can't blame that journalist at Kerrang, can you? You know, that guy there. And, you know, it just became less fun. I quit. And during this time I was playing with a few other bands and realized that was really fun too. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's amazing playing just with one band. I think this kind of happens more with older bands, like say Zeppelin. You just be in that band, or The Who, just be in that band. Nowadays, everyone's they're hustling, you know what I mean? Different projects. And as a drummer, as a musician, and as a person, I love that challenge. I've done stuff with King Django, who's on the Rancid record doing ska and reggae on Life Won't Wait. He taught me about like one drops and ragga beats and things like that. And I was like, this is super cool. And then doing stuff with All About Eve, people thought was a folk gothic hippie band. And they were the most rock and roll mothers I've ever been on tour with. They like pulling up to a venue and they'd give me the 20 quid to go and buy a bottle of Jack Robin, And when I got the audition, they're like, right, do you want lager or cider? I was like, oh, is this a trick question? Have I got the gig? And all the different bands, playing for Martin Gregg, completely different cat than Anti-Product, or, all these different bands. And it really brings your game up as a musician. And, all these people are all totally mad and they all think they're totally right. And that's the way they do things. And, whether it's Sham 69 or the Bay City Rollers.
Where do you fit in all these bands? Because you can obviously like change yourself to fit all these different styles. But when you're within that unit, what do you do? Do you step outside and sit back and watch it all kind of going on? Or do you try and become part of it?
It's a good question. I think I don't want to say as a professional, but like, if you're doing, you got to remember, especially if you're kind of helping out a band for a tour or doing an album session or something. My pledge to myself, or, my sort of, my MO or whatever you want to call it, was always to be like, to morph into that band so no one knows that you're the Johnny New Boy or like you're the session musician. I hate that word. I never consider myself a session musician. To me, I always said that I'm a band player that does sessions or a session musician that plays in bands. So if I'm on stage with, I don't know, Ginger, I want people to be like, yeah, that's his regular guy, or the Ramones, or, whatever. You wear the kind of gear, you act like how you are with them. And so when I was with, say, Martin Gregg, it would be like, I wouldn't be chucking the sticks up against the wall. It would be a black T-shirt. I got rid of the skull on the front kick drum, put it black and kept it kind of demure, but still rocked it, still kept it dark and heavy and engaging, But then that's completely different than, say, Tiger Tails, you know what I mean? Where it's like, go even crazier than you've ever gone before. And I'm like, that's awesome too.
You can even drop into the Ollie Murs mold as well and be in a video for him.
Ollie Murs, there you go. Yeah. I'd like to think that I fitted in. No one went, oh God, he's got a mohawk and that doesn't fit. I mean, a good example of this, when Lars Frederikson from Rancid phoned up, they'd been on tour. He's got a band called the Old Firm Casuals. And, Lars writes fantastic songs, not only with Rancid, but with Lars Frederikson and the Bastards. It's great records, So the Old Firm Casuals, continuation of that, rock and roll, punk, oi, whatever, it's just great rock and roll. Anyway, his drummer, Paul Rivers, he tried to save himself like 50 cents in a European tour toilet truck stop and jumped over the turnstile, clipped his ankle and put his bone through his elbow. Cost him a bit more than 50 cents, Paul, So suddenly he's on tour, literally on tour, middle of Europe for tour. And he's got a drummer with a busted arm. So he called up Steve Whale, guitarist from The Business, which is, another band I've done some crazy touring with. And Steve said, give Robin a call. He can step in at short notice, So Lars calls me, Robin, have you got my new album? I'm like, no. He goes, go to iTunes. I'm like, yeah. He goes, go and buy it. He already got a tenner out of me before I even played a note. So he said, learn the songs. I'll see you at the gig. That kind of thing. And he was like, but Robin, I don't want any of that Motley Crue shit. I was like, well, Lars, no problem. I won't do any of the Motley Crue shit. I think he thought I was just going to turn up like a Harlequin court jester, dressed like a rainbow or something and throw sticks.
In some tiger skin pants or something like that.
yeah, coming across between, Anvil, Spinal Tap and Steel Panther. I was like, look, man. So I think people see you enjoying yourself on stage and doing a bit of showmanship and they think that's all you can do. And you become labelled as a stick spinner. I don't do it. To me, it's all like a kind of rhythmic dance. Anyway, but that's just another take on it. So I just said to him, I said, Lars, man, I'm going to wear a black T-shirt. I said, I ain't going to do no jizzing off. I'm going to rock the songs. I said, but I will be wearing a bandana because I'm a sweaty motherfucker, And he went, yeah, cool, whatever. And that's how it was. And I took pride the whole tour, not doing a single, like, jizzy wank off, Except right at the end, I did one stick spin with, like, some guy, someone who knew. And I just did a wink, and there you go. But, I mean, it was an insane, crazy tour. I mean, there was, people would died on the tour in a support band and one of Lars's friends. And it was a tough time. It was very cold. We're touring in Ireland and the UK, and it was no rehearsal. They didn't even turn up for sound check because there was a premium football match on they wanted to watch.
Oh, thanks, Lars.
I was like, thanks, guys. I was at this venue, like in Watford, I think, and it's crazy packed out. And I'm literally walking up and down. There's only a certain amount of sips of Jack and Coke or beer or eating crisps and, listening to the set again. And then it was like, right, we're on. I was like, if there's a God. And we rocked it. But again, that's going back to what you're saying. It's like, yeah, I'd like to think that I can adapt pretty damn well to almost any unit, whether it's a punk thing, a rock thing, a hip hop thing, a drum and bass thing, a metal thing. And people wouldn't be like, he's clearly the hired gun, the session musician, the odd one out. I hate that, where you could just go, he's obviously the drummer. Look at that guy at the back or whatever, But also, whilst I'm saying that statement, I also still want to put a bit of myself there, no matter what, just so that people can be like, okay, that's what you get with Robin. So that's kind of my pledge to the bands and to me is, keep it real, but also keep it me as well, because I work hard to be. If people want me, they're gonna, hopefully they know that I can play their sound,
bring something else to it as well.
Yeah, hopefully there's a reason they've actually called me rather than the next guy who's probably a better drummer. You know what I mean? But whatever it is, I get
the feeling that nothing is kind of too big or too small for you, because you simply love playing and you never know what gig will lead to what opportunity.
That's exactly it.
Has there ever been a small gig or tour you've done that led to something that you perhaps never could imagine, or something that came back years later?
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, but number one, all of it. But I'll tell you a very specific little example, which again started off little and ended up me playing Wembley Arena. So there's your money shot right there. So again, in the times, probably around the Stamp times when I was looking for a band, I was putting out the word that I wanted to be a drummer and applying to a few ads here and there. And ages and ages ago, when I was still like living in my village, my parents' house, I was searching for bands probably just before I did the Ragdoll thing. And there was a band called Rub Ultra. They sent me some CDs and whatever. They were kind of kicking it big, kind of like a punky indie rock, crazy eclectic thing. And they were obviously in London, and I obviously thought they were millionaires because they had a single out, and they sent me the record, and I didn't end up doing anything with them, but their bass player was a girl called Charlie. We kind of loosely stayed in touch, and she then went on to be in a three-piece called No Santa. And this was a singer called Terry, bass player Charlie, and they needed a drummer. And I auditioned for them, and I didn't get that. And this is the key thing. This is why kids don't give up, because not getting something doesn't necessarily mean you didn't get, you lost the battle, but you might win the war, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't get the gig with No Santa, and it was actually one of the best ways not to get the job, because they gave it to this guy who was very technical, wearing headphones, playing to click, and kind of, no disrespect to him, but he wasn't like me as a player. He wasn't flamboyant. He didn't live and breathe and ooze the music with blood, sweat and tears. He was just like perfunctory at the back and probably very, very, well, he was very tight. But they said you didn't get the gig because you were too big a character. And I thought that's a compliment. That's not a diss.
You didn't not get the gig because you was a dick, so you was able to stay in touch.
Yeah, no, exactly. I wasn't crap on, I just didn't get it because maybe they thought I would overshadow whatever, their front man or whatever. Anyway, the point of the story is, as all musicians, if you either give up or you carry on playing in bands, and obviously Charlie, she's gone to the Rub Ultra, she's done the No Santa thing. And when that either folded, or she then became the bass player for Martin Gregg, who was a solo artist. And, he'd put out a record that sold like 30,000 copies, and he was doing his thing. And his drummer, they suddenly got a gig at, I think it's T in the Park or the V Festival, and Kelly Osbourne had pulled out. So literally in 3 days' time, the next band on the list who's waiting to get that gig. So Kelly Osbourne pulls out. The next band on the list, on the agent's list of bands who want to play the festival, Martin Gregg. So it's like, boom, he's got the gig. But the drummer he was using at the time had already said yes to the Flower Festival in Ireland or something. So he was over in Ireland, and they're like, oh my God, we got this amazing show to do. And they're like, does anyone know any drummers? And so it was Charlie. He was like, I know this guy Robin, or this Robin guy. And so I get this call from Charlie going, Robin, are you still playing drums? I'm like, hell yeah.
Are you still playing drums?
Are you still playing drums? And I'm playing them now, And so she said, look, this is a bit crazy, but I'm playing for Martin Gregg. And I was like, I heard of that guy. And we're playing the V Fest in 2.5 days' time. And here's a funny thing, linking up to the first band you mentioned. I had a gig the day of rehearsal with Kitty Hudson in a local pub in my folks' village. So what I did, I went to rehearsal with Martin Gregg with my proper kick-ass kit. At the end of that rehearsal at, say, 6 p.m., they loaded my gear onto their tour bus, Sleeper International tour bus, and started driving overnight up to Scotland. And I got picked up with a transit van and had this little small pink kit and did the gig with Kitty. And then at the end of the gig, they kept my kit and put it in a bedsit wherever they were staying and dropped me at Gatwick at about 1 a.m. And I was obviously had a few beers. And then at 6 a.m, I had to fly up to Edinburgh or wherever it was. So I had to really stay sober and not fall asleep. And then I didn't sleep at all. I get on the plane. I fly up to Scotland. I get out of the plane. They're like, you'll know it's us. And I walked out the Edinburgh airport, whatever it was. And there's this massive, great big sleeper bus. I sort of knock on the door and they go, hey, welcome to the, I was like, seen them like 10 hours before, whatever it was. And they said, there's your bunk, get some Z's. And I was obviously wired as fuck. I was tripping. I was like, yeah, this is so exciting. And we drove into the grounds. You get your wristbands, and you get your dressing room. And we did a kind of crazy sound check with the first band on. So we got the sound check. And it was terrible. I had, keyboards in my monitors. There wasn't even a keyboard player in the band, that kind of thing. And we rocked it. And it's just magical when you're the first band on, you see this horde of zombies running towards you. It's amazing. Where they open the floodgates. And then on the way back, we were all having a beer and they asked me to join the band. And then we ended up supporting Muse at Wembley Arena. And that's when I called up Mum and Dad and said, Mum and Dad, I'm playing Wembley Arena. So the moral of the story, kids, is if you get fired from a band for being too cool, too flashy or whatever, stick with it because you might end up playing Wembley Arena.
So good. I'd love to hear the conversation where you say you can't travel with them up to Scotland because I'm playing with Kitty Hudson.
Do you know what I'm saying? I'm playing this pub to 50 people. And that's the yin and yang. And that kind of answers your whole thing about, is a gig too big, too small? And it's not. They're all the same gig. I've played crap gigs to 15,000 people. I've played amazing gigs to 14 people, It's all rock and roll, baby.
On that, Robin, I've loved it.
Man.
You've been an absolute star.
Thanks very much. We could do part 2 for the other stories.
Excellent.
And then we'll meet up.
We've got to do it.
Definitely, man. Much love. See you later, dude.
That was a workout, right? I think Robin gave me one of my favourite interview quotes yet during that talk when speaking about finding the Iron Maiden cassette and wanting to know what that t-shirt sounded like. That's just brilliant. As mentioned, if you want to reach out to Robin, you can find him at Robin Guy Drummer on Facebook, at Robin Guy on Twitter, or Robin Guy Drums on Instagram. Thanks so much for being a listener to the Straight to Video podcast. I know I'm always ending episodes by kissing up to you all, but it means a lot, and thanks for continuing to share and shout. We'll be back in a few days with a brand new episode, but until then, have fun out there and I'll speak to you all real soon.